But further in, on pages 4 and 5, it's revealed that Prince William is burning with righteous fury, which might, is to be expected probably. But he's still refusing to comment on any of these allegations about fighting, bullying, and whether his pet name is really Willie. Now, Nigel, in your experience as a journalist of many years standing, is this sustainable, this kind of silence? Because if it goes on and they keep stum, this just becomes the accepted version of events, doesn't it? And it gets repeated and then becomes a form of history in a way. So every time William and Kate do something, with an anti-bullying charity, this gets raised again. Every time, when at the coronation, the fact that Harry isn't going to be there is going to get repeated. It's going to say, well, Harry wasn't there after allegations that. If they don't say something, this just becomes carved in stone, doesn't it, to some extent?
No, I think that's absolutely right. But again, it goes back to what you were saying. This is not a normal family. And so what William can't do, he can't do a kind of get into a he said, I said, this happened, that happened. It is very difficult for him to actually respond. So, no, I don't think you'll ever get any kind of public response. You won't get any comment from either Buckingham Palace or Kensington Palace. Probably what you will get is that William will try and correct the narrative, assuming the narrative needs correcting, by using friends and different sources to put out his side of the case. But I don't think we're in a situation whereby he can actually say something himself publicly. I think one of the problems with this whole thing is that it's all very well for Harry to have a go at his brother and his father, but if it just was a brother and a father, what you're talking about is Charles is now king, so what Harry is saying affects the whole situation of the monarchy. It's a constitutional issue, if you like, and his brother is the heir to the throne. So everything that Harry says has implications for us as a country, and that's where the whole thing becomes difficult. I'm sure that the palace will find a way of fighting back. It just won't be terribly obvious, like William sitting down and doing a similar interview.
No. What do you think, everybody? Do you think that William should be speaking out about this? I would have thought that in the palace right now, there would be wargaming, what different possible things they could say, what different possible ways it could be influenced, and what different outcomes they might have. They might be considering things like, like the Queen used to do, saying something to a member of the public on a walkabout, which is very artfully sort of overheard by a conveniently close journalist, something like that. So they're not addressing anything publicly, but they've got some kind of a statement that they managed to issue, which will sort of cover some of it up. But let's not forget, Nigel, I'm old enough to remember 1991, 1992, when a certain prince of this parish wrote a book saying his parenting had absolutely screwed him up and was emotionally illiterate and made him terribly sad and depressed. And that prince was called Charles. And there was a kerfuffle when he did all that. And he was the heir to the throne, and he was writing about the Queen, and it was said that he'd deeply upset her and his father. And they still managed to struggle on for another 30 years together. And some of the stuff that he wrote and that Diana wrote, Harry's just kind of confirming, isn't he? This isn't unusual for royals to sort of talk about personal stuff like this.
I think you're right. It's just it's probably the difficulty the royal family has in their relationship with the public and the media. Years ago, I used to be a royal correspondent, so I was dealing mostly with the then Prince Charles. And quite clearly, he would have much rather that I wasn't actually around. However, he also appreciated that the royal family have to work with the media. Part of the function of the royal family is to appear in public, and the only way that they can disseminate that is through press coverage. And that's something that I found about last night's interview to be odd. I wish Tom Bradby had actually pressed Harry a bit further about when he was talking about this is part of a crusade to change the British media. I don't know what Harry means by that. If he means that the royal family shouldn't work with the media, that is plainly absurd. Of course, they've got to be able to do that. If he's talking about a fundamental change in how the British media operates, that's a whole different ballgame. And we never actually found out quite what Harry was getting at.
Well, you'll also be, having to try to reverse 320 odd years of misbehaviour, which is going to be quite difficult, I would have thought, and part of the media. And also, you can't have a media which the royal family approves of, because then the media's not doing its job, is it? I mean, the whole point of what we do is to literally just be disapproved of to some extent, although, of course, to tell the truth, which is part of his problem, although it's the truth as he sees it rather than other people. Now, Keith says, everyone and their uncle is scrambling to comment on this. I am just amazed at how many members of the public know them both so intimately. It didn't stop previous royals that wrote books, thank you, Keith, and commented before. There are bigger problems in these islands than a bust up with the royals. Now, he's right, of course, isn't it? There's other more important things going on, which we're going to get to next. But the fact is that the royal family, I think, Nigel, it's almost like Big Brother. It's national entertainment, but also it's like a cipher for our own families. We watch what happens with them and we go, well, we've all had a sister-in-law like that, or we've all got a brother, and we kind of see connections with them because of what happens to our own family. And that is what keeps the monarchy going. The fact that they're relevant to us and our lives is why it's still there as an institution, because otherwise it's just dreadful. You wouldn't invent it tomorrow if you had to invent a system to be the head of state for a country. So if they didn't have this press attention going over every detail of their lives, and that's how, Keith, everyone is commenting on it because they all feel that connection. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't have a royal family at all, would we?
No, I think that's a very good point. That the whole thing is we've got two things going on here. We've got a family, and it's a family like others, and they have their disputes and their difficulties and their problems with each individual. And of course that the public is interested in that, and so it should be. And what is going on within the family is in the public interest. And that's because we actually have a constitutional monarchy, that our whole kind of political system is based on having a king as a head of state. Now, in a sense, that's an odd thing to have. It's something that's actually developed over, a couple of thousand years, effectively. But because we have a hereditary head of state, that we have a royal being head of state rather than a president, there is a public interest in what that head of state and his family get up to. And so, of course, that strays into the personal. Now, what I think the king would tell you if he was actually doing this broadcast rather than us.
You're welcome, Charles. Any day. Just give us a bell, mate.
Yeah, but if he was, what he would say is he'd like the two things to be separated. But, I mean, that's the ongoing problem. If you are somebody in the public eye, whether you're a politician, a celebrity, or a footballer, if you're going out there and you are in front of the public, you've got to expect the public to be interested in your private life. And the question is how you get that balance right.
Exactly. Now, it would just be interesting. It was one of the things that, for example, talk about royal racism, that has an impact on the Commonwealth and on questions of independence, sometimes from the Commonwealth. So what happens in the family, private conversations can play out on the global political stage. It can have a legitimate impact, something that should be reported on. But one thing I want to ask you about this, Nigel, before we move on to Rishi, some of the comments in the paper are from sort of anonymous comments from childhood friends of Harry's saying they know plenty. They know a field full of stuff about Prince Harry. They could write a book of their own. Now, although Harry's got every right as a private citizen to pick up his pen, the fact that he's broken the royal omerta, which all William and Harry's school friends and adult friends have observed up to now, does that, in your view, make it more likely some of those friends who might know something more or different might themselves then break that silence because they'll consider that Harry's already broken it? Do you think this could actually backfire on him, that other people now start speaking?
Yes, they could well do, and there could be more stories coming out that Harry is actually not included in his book, and he won't be terribly happy to actually have those sort of things put in the public domain. I mean, Harry constantly went on about invasions of his privacy, and of course, he's done more to invade his own privacy than anyone in the media has. One of the issues, I think, comes down to whether or not there is actually a reconciliation that could be possible. Now, last night, Harry seemed to think that, yes, there could be. And he wants to sit down with the royal family in private and discuss how that might happen.
And never tell people what was said.
And the idea would be we'd never hear about it. So I think, again, we're back now to how this family actually works. It rather depends on whether William and Charles want such a reconciliation. It does seem to me that having put quite so much out there quite so often, I mean, so far, Harry has broken the rules with opera, he's broken the rules with Netflix, and now with the forthcoming book. It seems to be difficult how he can ever have a place back in the royal family ever again. But maybe Charles and William have a different idea and they would like to actually get him back. Only time will tell on that one.
Yes, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? It's only May, the coronation, and there is apparently a standing open invitation for Harry and Meghan to attend. Whether they'd fly in and fly out again, or whether they'd go to the sandwiches and tea afterwards, who knows? I'll have to find out. That'll be interesting to watch, I'm sure.